I still remember the exact moment my world split in two. It was a Tuesday evening in October, the kind where the air had just enough bite to remind you that warmth doesn't last forever. I'd made a reservation at Bellacourt, the kind of restaurant where the lighting is low and golden and the tables are far enough apart that a couple can actually hear each other. I'd planned this dinner for 3 weeks. Anniversary dinner. 6 years of marriage, and I wanted to do it right. I was already seated at the table, wearing the charcoal suit Anna had picked out for me last Christmas. I'd ordered a glass of water and was checking my watch for the 4th time when my phone buzzed. Running late. Send the car back. Have Derek bring me. I read it twice. Then I read it again. Derek was Anna's driver. A company hire, part of the executive package that came with her promotion to CEO of Vantera Solutions 8 months ago. Young guy, mid-20s, the kind of face that looks like it was assembled by a committee trying to design someone inoffensive and ended up with someone quietly handsome instead. I texted back, "What? I'm already here. I'll come get you." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Don't be difficult, Larry. Derek knows the route. Just wait. I set my phone face down on the white tablecloth and looked around the restaurant. Couples leaning toward each other over candlelight. A waiter refilling someone's wine. An older man holding his wife's hand across the table like it was still a privilege. I waited 40 minutes. When Anna finally walked through the door, she was laughing. Not the polite, contained laugh she used at board meetings, this was a real one, the kind that reached her eyes, the kind she used to give me. She was still talking to someone over her shoulder as she stepped inside. Derek was right behind her, holding her coat. He said something low, and she laughed again, touching his arm briefly as she took the coat back. She spotted me and the laugh softened into a smile, but it was a different smile. The shift was subtle, but I'd been married to this woman for 6 years. I knew every version of her face. "You made it," I said. "Of course." She sat down across from me, shook out her napkin. "Sorry about the delay. The Whitmore call ran over. You could have told me you were bringing Derek." She picked up the menu. "He drove me here, Larry. That's his job. He walked you to the door. He held your coat. He's courteous. I'd prefer a discourteous driver." I looked at her for a long moment. She didn't look up from the menu. Her hair was done differently, softer, down around her shoulders instead of the usual boardroom bun. She was wearing the green dress I'd always loved. I'd assumed she wore it for me. "Did you wear that for a client dinner?" I asked. She finally looked up. "What is wrong with you tonight?" Nothing was wrong with me that night. That was the problem. I was clear-eyed and stone-cold sober, and I was watching my wife order the sea bass and sip Chardonnay and talk about a merger she was managing, and I kept seeing that laugh, the real one, the one that reached her eyes, aimed at someone standing behind her like an afterthought. We ate dinner. We talked. She told me about the Whitmore deal. I told her about a project I'd picked up through my architecture firm, a small commercial renovation downtown. She nodded at the right moments. The conversation was professional, efficient, and almost entirely empty. When the check came, she reached for it automatically. "I have it," I said. She paused. "Are you sure?" "It's fine, I have it, Anna." She pulled her hand back. I paid. We left. Derek was waiting outside with the car, a black Audi A8 that Vantera leased for Anna's use, which I had co-signed the insurance on as a courtesy when the arrangement was new. He opened the rear door for her. She climbed in without looking back at me. I stood on the sidewalk watching the door close between them. I didn't get in. "Larry." Anna lowered the window. "I'll take a cab," I said. She stared at me. "You're being ridiculous." "Probably." I walked 2 blocks before I called the cab. The night air was cold now, not just crisp. I stood under a streetlight and breathed and tried to locate the specific thing that was wrong, the thing that had its teeth in me. I knew the feeling. I just hadn't wanted to name it yet. I named it on the walk home. I want to be honest about who I was before that dinner, because it matters. I was a man who believed in his marriage the way some people believe in gravity, not with fanfare, not with flowers every week, but with absolute certainty that it was there, holding things in place. I'm an architect. Larry Holt, principal at a small but respected firm called Holt & Crane. We do commercial and residential projects, nothing flashy, but work that lasts and looks like it meant something. I'd built the firm from scratch over 8 years, working 16-hour days through the lean years, the years when Anna was still climbing the ladder at Vantera and we split ramen noodles and laughed about it. She'd been a mid-level operations manager when we married. Smart, driven, the kind of person who walked into a room and made everyone want to perform better just by being present. I loved her work ethic because I recognized it. We were the same that way, both of us building something, both of us willing to sacrifice for it. When she was promoted to VP, I celebrated harder than she did. When she made CEO, I took her to dinner at a place far nicer than Bellacourt and cried a little in the men's room because I was so proud of her I didn't know what to do with it. I gave up pursuing a major government contract, a school complex that would have put Holt & Crane on the regional map, because the deadline coincided with Anna's first major board presentation, and she needed me available. I made that call without resentment. That was who I was. I also need to say, I trusted Anna completely. Not naively, I'd seen enough of the world to know trust is a choice, not a default. I chose it, every day, for 6 years. I chose it so thoroughly that even after the dinner at Bellacourt, I spent 2 weeks telling myself I was paranoid. My friend Nathan was the one who said it plainly. We were having lunch, a deli on 5th. He's an old friend, known me since college, the kind of guy who says the thing no one wants to say because he's constitutionally incapable of letting things slide. How long has the driver been in the picture? He asked. 8 months. Since the promotion. And when did things get weird with Anna? I put my sandwich down. 7 months ago, I said. Nathan looked at me. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. I went home that night and I thought about it with the same methodical attention I gave to structural problems in buildings. What were the signs? When had they appeared? What was the load-bearing truth underneath all of it? Late nights that weren't explained. Anna used to text me when she was running behind. She'd stopped doing that around February. I'd noticed but attributed it to the pressure of the new role. Her phone. She'd always left it on the kitchen counter at night. Somewhere around March, it started coming to bed with her. Face down. Her laugh. The real one, the one that reached her eyes. I was trying to remember the last time she'd aimed it at me and I was coming up empty somewhere around midsummer. And Derek. The way she'd said he's courteous with a faint edge of defensiveness, like the word was armor she'd prepared in advance. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark next to my wife and I stared at the ceiling and I felt the ground shifting under 6 years of certainty. I started paying attention differently after that. Not obsessively, I wasn't following her or hiring anyone. I just stopped looking away from the things I'd been willing to not see. I noticed that Derek's schedule had expanded. He used to drop Anna at the office and pick her up. Now he was taking her to lunches, evening events, the occasional Saturday errand. I knew because Anna mentioned it casually, the way you mention things you've decided are unremarkable. I noticed that when I suggested picking her up myself, she always had a reason it wouldn't work. Parking. Traffic. Derek knows the route. I noticed that she'd gotten a second phone number for work calls. She mentioned it once and moved past it quickly. I filed it away. The confirmation came on a Thursday in November, 5 weeks after Bellacourt. I'd left a set of blueprints at home accidentally and come back to the house around 11 in the morning. The Audi was in the driveway. Anna had a bored lunch that day, or so she'd told me. I remember standing on the front walk for a moment, looking at that car, and feeling very calm. The kind of calm that means your body already knows what your brain is still processing. I went inside. I heard them in the kitchen. Just voices at first, his low and easy, hers with that same warm quality she used to point at me. Then I heard her laugh. The real one. I stood in the doorway and looked at my wife sitting on the kitchen counter, our kitchen counter, in our house, while the men who drove her car stood close enough that their knees were touching. She had her hand on his forearm. He was showing her something on his phone, leaning in. The intimacy of it was quiet and devastating, the kind that's worse than something explosive because it tells you this has been going on long enough to become comfortable. Anna saw me first. The color dropped out of her face in a way I'll never forget. Derek took a half step back. He had the intelligence to look ashamed. Anna, to her credit, or maybe just from shock, didn't try to immediately explain it away. "Larry," she said. "I forgot blueprints." "This isn't what, please don't." My voice came out flat and quiet. "Please do not say that sentence." She stopped. "Derek," I said, "I need you to leave my house." He left. I heard the front door, then the car, then silence. Anna slid off the counter. She was still wearing her work clothes, the sharp blazer, the tailored trousers, all the armor of the CEO. She looked at me and I looked at her, and I think we both understood that whatever was going to happen next was going to cost us everything. "How long?" I asked. "Larry, how long, Anna?" She closed her eyes. 4 months. I did the math. April. The cruelest month, it turns out. "Did you sleep with him?" A pause that lasted the rest of my life. "Yes." I nodded slowly. I walked past her to the home office, found the blueprints on the desk, tucked them under my arm. I walked back through the kitchen. She was standing exactly where I'd left her, watching me like I was something fragile that might shatter. "The car insurance," I said. "I'll be removing myself from it." And I walked out. I drove to the office and I spread the blueprints out on my drafting table and I stared at them for 4 hours without doing a single thing. My colleague Pete asked me twice if I was all right. I told him twice that I was. At 5 o'clock I locked up and drove to Nathan's place and sat in his kitchen and told him everything. Nathan listened the way he always does, completely still, no interruptions. When I finished, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey and pushed one toward me. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to burn everything she has and salt the earth," I said. "Okay. And after that?" "I want to be done." He nodded. "Then let's make sure done means done. Not half done. Not almost done. Actually done." That was the night the plan started. I am not a man who acts from rage, which is both a strength and, in this situation, a weapon. Cold clarity is more dangerous than hot fury, and I had an unlimited supply of it. Every decision I made over the following weeks was deliberate, documented, and precise. The first thing I did was call my attorney. I'd known Philip Carter for years, a blunt, methodical man who had handled contract work for Holt and Crane and who I trusted completely. I told him I needed to start divorce proceedings. "Assets?" he asked. "We have a joint savings account, a joint checking account, the house, which I own outright. The mortgage was paid off with money from my firm's first major contract before we married, so it was premarital. Her income has been deposited into a separate account since the promotion. We have one vehicle we own jointly, a 4-year-old Jeep Cherokee, and the Audi which is company leased." "Good," Philip said. "The house is clean, premarital asset, clearly yours. The Jeep is joint property. We'll make a claim." "I want to sell the Jeep," I said. "You own half. You can propose a sale as part of the settlement." "I don't want to wait for the settlement. The registration is in both names but I have possession." Philip was quiet for a moment. "That gets complicated fast, Larry. Then get me something I can do immediately that hurts." He thought about it. "The insurance on the Audi." I already told her I was removing myself. "Do it today. Don't wait for the conversation. File with the insurance company directly, send written notice to Anna, and inform Vantara's fleet manager that you're no longer a co-insurer. The car is technically uninsured until the company processes new coverage. That stops her from using it without real legal exposure." I did it that afternoon. The look on Anna's face when she received the written notification, forwarded to me later by my attorney as part of the file, was described to me by Philip as notably distressed. Apparently she'd called to demand I rescind it. I was unavailable. The Jeep took 3 weeks to sort through proper channels. What I could do immediately was propose the sale as part of a written separation agreement, which I had Philip draft and serve. Anna's attorney pushed back. I didn't budge. The Jeep sold for $24,000. My half was deposited into an account Anna had no access to. Those were the financial openings. The rest was more personal. Anna's world at Vantara was a careful construction. She was respected, admired, considered visionary. She'd cultivated a public image built on competence and integrity, a CEO who made hard decisions cleanly, who built strong teams, who led with her whole self. I had no interest in destroying her career. Whatever she'd done to our marriage had no bearing on her professional abilities, and I'm not a man who confuses the two. But integrity matters in a C-suite. And there were people in Anna's life who deserved to know the truth. Her parents, for one. John and Carol Reeves were good people, conservative and traditional, who had welcomed me into their family with genuine warmth. They'd attended our wedding with tears in their eyes. Carol called me on my birthday every year. John had taken me fishing twice. I called them on a Saturday morning. I laid out what had happened, calmly and factually. John was silent for a very long time. Carol cried. I told them I wasn't asking them to choose sides, they were her parents and they would love her regardless, as they should. But they deserved to know why their daughter's marriage was ending. The conversation Anna had with her parents that following Sunday, which she later described to Philip's team in emotional and somewhat accusatory terms, was apparently the worst of her life. John Reeves told his daughter that what she'd done was a betrayal of her vows and of her character, and that he was ashamed of her choices. Carol didn't speak to her for 2 weeks. I'm not proud of the pain that caused Anna's family. But I refused to let the narrative be controlled by the person who had destroyed the marriage. Truth was the only thing I had left to give. Derek's situation was simpler and more satisfying. He was a company employee, and his relationship with the CEO was a significant HR and legal liability for Vantara Solutions, conflict of interest, power imbalance, potential harassment claims from other employees who might wonder what it meant for workplace fairness. I didn't call Vantara's HR department. I wrote them a letter. Detailed, documented, and professional in tone. Derek was quietly terminated within the week. His NDA prevented him from commenting publicly. His next job, from what Nathan tracked down later, was driving for a rideshare service. The affair partner's removal from the daily picture wasn't revenge so much as consequence. He'd made a choice and the choice had a cost. That was simply how the world worked. The divorce proceedings took 6 months. Anna hired a firm from downtown, expensive and aggressive, which told me she was frightened and also that she was still Anna. When cornered, she fought with resources. She offered 3 settlements. The first was an insult. The second was better but structured to minimize the house question. The third was close but not right. Philip and I spent a Tuesday going line by line through the third offer. At the end of it, I circled 2 items with a red pen and said, "These 2, and we're done." The final agreement gave me the house outright, formally recognized as premarital property. The joint savings account was split 60-40 in my favor, reflecting the period during which my income had subsidized the household while Anna built her career. I asked for nothing else. No spousal support, no claims on her Vantara equity. I wanted a clean break, not a prolonged entanglement. She signed in February. I remember sitting in Philip's office when the confirmation came through. He handed me the final papers across the desk and I looked at them, 6 years of marriage reduced to 37 pages of legal language, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not happiness yet. Not freedom yet. Just relief, the way a tooth stops aching after it's finally pulled. Philip shook my hand. "You handled this well," he said. "I had good help. You also didn't do anything stupid. You'd be surprised how often that's the harder half." I thanked him and went home. The house was different without her things in it. Not worse, exactly, but different the way a room sounds different when a piece of furniture is removed. You hear the space itself for the first time. I walked through the rooms in the first week of March and I noticed where her art had hung on the walls, the pale rectangles where the paint was slightly darker. I noticed the absence of her scent from the bedroom. I noticed the kitchen counter and made a conscious decision to renovate it. I called a contractor. New countertops. White quartz. The kitchen looked like mine after that. I also started running again. I'd given it up 3 years into the marriage when the commute to work got longer and the evenings got busier. I started slowly, 2 miles, then 3, then 5. By April I was running 6 miles before work on weekdays and 8 on weekends. My body remembered what it used to know. I came back to myself in stages, the way a landscape recovers after fire, slowly and then all at once. Nathan dragged me to the gym twice a week. He is not subtle about his methods. "You look like a man who got cheated on," he said in March. "I did get cheated on," I said. "Right. Stop looking like it." By May I'd lost 17 pounds and built back the shoulder and chest muscle I'd quietly let atrophy through the soft years of a comfortable marriage. I cut my hair shorter than I'd worn it since my 30s. I bought 3 suits that fit the new shape of me. Pete at the office told me I looked like a different person. "Good different or bad different?" I asked. "Good different. Like you remembered who you were." The work helped enormously. Architecture has always been the place where I make the most sense to myself. When everything else is structural chaos, I can go to a set of drawings and find order. In the months after the divorce, I threw myself into a project I'd been circling for 2 years, a mixed-use development in the warehouse district, residential units above commercial space, sustainable design, a building that would actually contribute something to the city rather than just filling a gap. I put in a pitch to the city planning committee in April. Nathan helped me refine the presentation. My business partner at the firm, Ellen Crane, ran the numbers 5 times to make sure they held. The committee approved the project in June. When I got the call, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot outside the municipal building, still in the suit I'd worn for the presentation. I held the phone for a long moment after the call ended, looking at my hands, the same hands that had drafted every line of those plans. Then I called Nathan. "We got it," I said. He yelled loud enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "I want to tell you about the night I saw Anna again, because it was the chapter I'd been writing in my head without realizing it." It was a Thursday in September. 10 months after Bellacourt. 8 months after the divorce was filed. 2 months after it was final. I was at a gallery opening for a friend's photography show, downtown, the kind of event where the wine is decent and the conversations are better. I was talking to a woman named Claire, a structural engineer I'd met at a conference the previous year, easy to talk to, genuinely funny, the kind of person whose brain you can see working when she listens to you. We'd gotten coffee twice since the divorce, nothing decided yet, but the foundation was honest and that was more than I could say for anything I'd had in the last year of my marriage. Anna came in around 9. I saw her before she saw me, which was how I would have scripted it if I were the kind of person who scripted things. She looked, and I say this without pleasure, diminished. Not broken, Anna was too resilient to break completely, but smaller than I remembered. She was thinner, and not in the way that comes from fitness. Her eyes moved around the room with a watchfulness that hadn't been there before, the eyes of someone who has learned to be cautious about what she'll find. She found me. I watched the moment hit her. The color shifted in her face, not the drained white of the kitchen doorway, but something more complicated. Recognition. Regret. Maybe surprise at what she was looking at, because I know I looked different than the men she'd last seen signing divorce papers across a conference table. Claire said something and I turned back to her and laughed at whatever it was, because it was genuinely funny and because I was genuinely in the conversation, present in a way I hadn't been in years. When I glanced back, Anna was still watching. She came over 20 minutes later. Of course she did. "Larry," she said. "Anna." I introduced her to Claire, who shook her hand and then excused herself gracefully. She had good instincts, Claire. Anna and I were briefly alone in the corner of the gallery, surrounded by large black and white photographs of empty roads. "You look well," she said. She meant it as a compliment, but it came out as something more painful. "Thank you." "You." She shook her head slightly. "I've been managing." "I'm sure." A pause. She was building toward something, I could tell. Anna always had a structure to her conversations, even the hard ones. "I owe you more than an apology," she said. "I know that. I wanted to say it, if you'd let me." "I'll let you say it." "I'm sorry. What I did was a betrayal of everything we had and everything you were to me. I was careless with something precious and I have lived with that every day since." Her voice was steady but her hands weren't. Derek is gone. It ended before the divorce was even final. It was nothing. It was a weakness and a stupidity, and it cost me the best relationship of my life. I looked at her. I let her say it. I let the silence sit for a moment afterward. Anna, I said, I believe that you're sorry. I believe that you mean every word of that. And I want you to know that I don't hate you, because hate would mean I'm still carrying something. I'm not. You're someone I used to love more than anything, and I wish you well with the rest of your life, and this door is closed. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes went bright. I know, she said quietly. I know it is. Claire came back with a glass of wine for me and a smile that had nothing apologetic in it. I took the wine. Anna nodded once, a small, dignified nod, and walked away toward the other side of the gallery. I watched her go. She had her posture back, at least. I was glad for that. She would be all right eventually. Anna always landed somewhere. Just not here. Everything okay? Claire asked. Everything's fine, I said. And I meant it in a way I hadn't meant a simple thing in more than a year. The warehouse district project broke ground in November. I stood at the site on a Tuesday morning while the equipment moved in, holding a hard hat and a set of drawings that had lived in my head for 2 years and were now becoming real in the only way that matters, in concrete and steel and glass, in something that would outlast me. Ellen stood next to me. Nathan came by around noon with terrible gas station coffee that somehow tasted exactly right. This is it, Nathan said, looking at the cleared lot. This is the start of it, I said. How does it feel? I thought about it. The October night at Bellacourt. The kitchen counter. The papers. The running. The sleepless weeks. The white quartz countertop in the kitchen. The 6 miles before dawn. The city committee meeting. Claire's laugh at the gallery. Good, I said. It feels like it was supposed to happen. He looked at me like he was checking whether I actually meant that. I did. There's a particular kind of freedom that only comes when something you believed was essential is removed and you discover that you don't collapse. That the scaffolding you thought was holding you up was actually just decoration. That the actual structure, the thing that was always doing the real load bearing, was you all along. I hadn't known that about myself before. Anna, in the worst possible way, gave me that knowledge. I would have preferred to earn it differently. But I have never been interested in wasting what I've paid for. About a year after the divorce was final, I heard through a mutual acquaintance, a woman named Dana who had known us both since before the marriage, that Anna had left Vantera. Voluntarily, apparently, though the circumstances weren't entirely clear. The board had commissioned an HR review of her tenure after Derek's termination and my formal letter, and whatever that review found had made her position complicated. She was consulting independently now. Still sharp, still capable. Still Anna. Dana said she seemed lonely. I thanked Dana for the information and filed it away with no particular feeling attached to it. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like the closing of an equation. All the variables had been resolved, the thing had balanced, and the work was done. Derek I heard about from Nathan, who had no policy against finding things out just for the sake of knowing. He was living in a different city, driving for a delivery service, in a relationship with someone he'd met at a convenience store. I wished him no further harm and thought about him approximately never. Claire and I made things official on New Year's Day. Not with a ring, too much formality too soon, and we were both people who'd learned something from our respective histories about the danger of moving faster than the truth. We just said it plainly over breakfast in her apartment. She made eggs, I made coffee, and we decided to be honest about what we were to each other. She is careful where I am deliberate. She is funny where I am earnest. She asks questions with genuine interest and listens like she intends to remember the answers. She does not need me to be more than I am, and I do not need her to be anything other than what she already is. It is a very quiet kind of happiness, the kind that has no drama in it, and I am more grateful for it than I have words for. The warehouse district project opened its first residential units in March, 16 months after groundbreaking, right on schedule. I was at the ribbon cutting in the morning and had dinner with Claire in the evening. At some point during the dinner, she reached across the table and put her hand over mine and said something about how proud she was of what I'd built. I looked at her and I looked around the restaurant, not Bellacourt this time, somewhere simpler, somewhere with bright light and honest food, and I thought about the man who had sat at a candlelit table in October and watched his wife walk through a door laughing at someone else's joke. I thought about what that man could not have known, that the ground giving way beneath him was not the end of anything but the beginning of everything that would actually matter. I did not feel grateful to Anna. I did not feel grateful for the betrayal. But I felt, sitting in that bright room with my hand under Claire's, a complete and unambiguous gratitude for what my life had become. For the building taking shape across town with my name on it. For the house with the white quartz counter and the early morning miles and the work that made sense. For the friend who'd poured whiskey and asked the right question. For the woman across the table who looked at me and saw the actual thing. I thought about Anna sometimes, less and less as the months passed. She had been the center of my world for 6 years, and then she had not been, and the world had not ended. That was the strangest and most important thing I'd learned. The world does not end. You rebuild it, more carefully this time, with better materials, with a clearer understanding of what load-bearing actually means. I would not change what happened. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like something a person says to avoid admitting how much it cost. But I mean it the only way it can be honestly meant, not that I'm glad she betrayed me, not that the pain was worth it, but that I would not trade the man I became afterward for the man I was before. That man was good and loved completely and built a marriage with his whole heart. But he had stopped knowing who he was outside of it. He had confused the scaffolding for the structure. I know the difference now. Claire squeezed my hand and asked what I was thinking about. Architecture, I said. She laughed, the real kind, the kind that reaches the eyes, and I laughed with her, and outside the window the city we both lived in was lit up and going on and completely indifferent to the small bright fact of two people being quietly, genuinely happy. That was more than enough. That was everything.